The principal question, of course, is what is the Indian government doing? But however, should Pakistan stop denying? Zafar Hilali is with us from Karachi, former Pakistan ambassador to the US. Anis Jilani, columnist and top Supreme Court lawyer from Pakistan, joining us. Maroof's with us. James Kreindler, who is the attorney for the American 2611 victims, is joining us from New York in 4 minutes, and so is K.C. Singh. Mr. Hilali, you know, I'm just look at it in a very neutral way, Mr. Hilali. You have this person whose role in 2611 is without doubt, who has pleaded guilty to all 12 charges of his involvement in the attacks, and is explained in great detail the role of the ISI. I think it will be insufficient, don't you think, to come up with a response saying, you know, he doesn't have credibility. Mr. Hilali.
Well, you know, I mean, the man is regarded and well known as a pathological liar. He has lied in various disguises to his wives, to his children. He is going in for plea bargaining. He is, I mean, quite frankly, if an entire case hinges on the words of a pathological liar, what can one say? The question is very simple. The Mumbai attacks were investigated in India, and you felt that they were leads on Pakistan. Based on what evidence you gave us, people were arrested, all sorts of documents were required, many, I believe, were exchanged. The people are looking into it. The people arrested here are still under arrest. And this trial is not proceeding because I believe some sound tapes or whatever are not either admissible or not being provided. I think to jump to conclusions just because a man who is a recognized master of disguises and a man who's actually changed his name to suit his face.
Yes.
I mean, it's extraordinary you place so much emphasis on it.
Well, there are three reasons why it would be difficult to take your argument. One is there is new evidence. This is not Indian government evidence. This is American government evidence, American court. Secondly, there are new documents I want to hold up for all our viewers tonight before I go across to our next guest, Anis Jilani. Is a piece of paper I hold in my hand which is phone numbers written out by David Coleman Headley. This is not manufactured by Times Now. If you look at the very bottom, this is government exhibit number 5 in an American court. I don't know if you can see it. I can fax this to you later this evening. Mr. Hilali and Mr. Anis Jilani. There are two very interesting names written here. I want the camera to focus where I am pointing. Look at this. Major Iqbal, Major I, and Major Sajid Mir. The phone numbers are not Gurgaon numbers, sir. They are Pakistan numbers. They are among a whole lot of Pakistan numbers, and I want to turn the page and also mention that this is not the only major. If you look at where I am pointing now, there's Major Iqbal. This is the personal notings of David Coleman Headley. Where did this evidence come from, Mr. Hilali or Mr. Let me take Anis Jilani's response. In a court of law, can you dismiss all this?
Well,
Mr. Anis Jilani.
As far as I'm concerned,
okay, Mr. Hilali, go on.
This man.
Yes. Yes, go on, Mr.
I believe this man worked for the Drug Enforcement Agency of America. Is that correct?
Sir, this person who we are speaking of, David Coleman Headley, has stated in court the question you are trying to avoid, that the ISI helped the LET and other terror groups in his umbrella. He has confessed to under all 12 charges against him. That's the person we are speaking about.
You know, you produce a telephone number.
Yes.
You produce the telephone number of a certain Major Iqbal. It's like saying that you have produced the telephone number of a Mr. Smith. You are saying he's in the ISI and that this gentleman was in contact with him. We know that this chap worked for the drug people of the United States, whatever that agency is called. Now, it is entirely possible
No.
that if he worked for the Americans, that he needed to liaise with somebody.
So,
To deduce from that those people set him up from Mumbai is a bit far-fetched.
so this is, this argument is not holding. Because the reason is that if you can say, and let me go across to Anis Jilani, if you say that David Coleman Headley cannot be trusted, should we also say that Tawar Hussain Rana also cannot be trusted? Both have practically said the same things. Tawar Hussain Rana, Mr. Jilani, has said that all the acts were done at the behest of the Pakistan government and the ISI.
I think the question, what it boils down to is if ISI as an institution was involved, or some persons within the armed forces or within ISI were doing this on their own. So I think just the fact that these documents, they have been presented in an American court, obviously it doesn't make them holy. At the same time, if there is any allegation of involvement of any Pakistani, and I think if it's a intelligence agency, it makes it even more important, then I think the government of Pakistan should investigate if there is
Exactly.
good faith. I think there is no reason that there should be opposition to government of Pakistan agreeing to investigate and say, okay, we will cooperate with you in investigating this further. And if there are culprits, then they should take action.
But that is the precise position, Mr. Hilali, you see. That is the unadulterated legal position. That is the argument. And let me point out to you, Mr. Hilali, that there are multiple others. Even if Pakistan argues that David Coleman Headley's testimony is not reliable, what about the testimonies of all the other terror accused in the past?
This is, I think, the question is that Pakistan is suffering a lot because of terrorism, and I think the government and the people of Pakistan, they should realize that just covering it up under the carpet is not going to solve the problem. I think it has to be a joint fight. It has to be a joint fight by all concerned against terrorism, regardless of where it happens.
No, but that's not the argument. Tonight, the simple point is this. Let me get in Maruf. And Maruf, I think you've heard Mr. Hilali's first response. Question tonight is about the role the Pakistani security forces played in 26/11. We have the testimony. You heard Mr. Hilali's point of view tonight. The government of India is saying nothing, surprisingly, Maruf, which is absolutely surprising. But what would you expect the government of India to do?
Well, the government of India is, feeling that they would like to wait and watch till all the evidence comes home. But basically, Mr. Hilali is trying to defend the indefensible. It is not just the evidence that have been produced in the Chicago courts. I go a bit further. There's a globally published book which is called Deadly Embrace by Bruce Riedel, who's been for 30 years a CIA operative and a very senior advisor to 4 US presidents, including President Obama. He has articulated and put into place para-chapter and verse of how the ISI operates, how there is a great obsession in the Pakistan Armed Forces to continue to use the ISI for all dirty tricks. In fact, it started in General Zia's time when he made a heady cocktail of religion and terror, and he thought that was going to be Pakistan's answer as a counter-strategic balance against India. But what has happened, unfortunately, and the Mehran attacks on the Karachi base is a clear case in point, that what Pakistan's army chief has repeatedly referred to as strategic assets have now become a complete liability and a dangerous liability for Pakistan. The question that I want to ask Mr. Hilali is a simple one, that if you continue to harbor the sentiments for the ISI, not just you, but even your Prime Minister in Parliament seems to have given them a chit as the most important organization that is important to Pakistan and its future, then really is Pakistan's future going to be repeated attacks and bomb blasts by the very terrorists that the ISI has nurtured over the years? David Headley's evidence is one of the major last coffins, nails on the coffin. But there's been enough evidence available. What saddens me on the part of India's actions is we seem to
one second, Maruf, before we come to India, and I certainly will come to India, Mr. Hilali, why such defensiveness about the ISI? I can give you 1,000 examples right now about other people who have also nailed the ISI, and in fact some of the same operatives who are treated as rising stars within the ISI for carrying out acts of terrorism. Why this over defensiveness?
You see, first of all, try to get the matter into some perspective. The fact of the matter is that at one stage of our history, especially during the Afghan Jihad, the ISI was conducting basically clandestine operations, putting together people who would go and fight in Afghanistan. During the course of that long 20-year war, they built up a lot of contacts. For different reasons, extremist groups started forming their own groups and rivaling and competing with each other to go and fight in the jihad. Now, that was a joint operation undertaken by the United States and Pakistan, during the course of which a lot of people in those groups and in the ISI built up contacts. Now, when that war ended and the policy was that no more jihad, no more of that kind of war, it was unreasonable to expect that those people who were handling people at that time would suddenly break off connections and would not recognize each other or do anything.
So what?
Thereafter started... No, wait a minute.
One second. So 1 minute. You're giving me the entire history, but you're not answering my question.
Thereafter started Kashmir.
So you're not answering my question.
Look, I'm trying to put it into perspective.
So we are not discussing Kashmir. We are discussing the ISI. We are discussing the ISI. We are discussing...
No, you are... Yes,
Mr. Hilali.
The ISI was set up partly because of Kashmir. It was set up because of the Afghan jihad. Now... Please understand one thing.
Mr. Hilali, you are trying to take everything back to the 80s. No, Mr. Hilali, you're trying to take everything back to the 80s.
I'm not.
But the fact is...
Mr. Hilali.
1 second.
I am not doing that.
I might like to ask Mr. Hilali.
Okay, go on,
Mr. Hilali, sir, with respects to you, Mr. Hilali, with respects to you, we are all familiar with the history. In fact, the ISI was set up even before the Afghan Jihad, and General Akhtar was used by General Zia to basically arm it to its teeth and make it the invisible force that it was for a long time, till it became visible under Zia when he decided to use the ISI on the other side. And there is a well-known couplet which often was repeated, "Humne jash mein Kabul bana liya, ab chalo Kashmir chalo." But the point at issue is now, where is the ISI? Is ISI going to allow Pakistan, for your own sake, to turn the corner? Or are you going to live with the devils that you've created and you don't have the ability, and as long as you continue to be in a state of denial, you are not going to be able to turn the corner, Mr. Hilali.
Let me add that,
and you are victims, Mr. Hilali, you are victims of your homegrown terror.
No,
you're not victims like we are of cross-border terror.
And Mr. Hilali, just want to point out one thing to you. Look at the ramifications of this, of what you're saying. This gentleman, Major Iqbal, was upset that the Bombay airport was not included on the list. I am quoting from David Coleman Headley's testimony. How can you afford to be, you've suffered so much terrorism, how can you afford to be indifferent towards this?
You take what Headley, or whatever his name is, I mean, he's even changed his name 3 times. You take what Headley says as the gospel truth and throw it at me and ask me to explain it. I just don't understand what kind of reasoning you are using.
No, let me take another example.
All I can say is that how can we be interested in... Look, oh, fuck.
Just for your information, sir, he changed his name thrice. He changed his name thrice to get travel documents. He could not be visiting India on Pakistani documents as the name Jelani. Therefore, he adopted an American name which would make it easy for him to get the documents to travel to India with impunity.
On the contrary, I have just read today that he changed his name, which had nothing to do with travel documents, but because he looked very much English. So somebody said to him, why don't you change your name to Headley, because people mistake you for a foreigner anyway. Now, you know, these are the kind of different views and things that we get in Pakistan and you have in India. You jump to a conclusion and work backwards.
One is not jumping to a conclusion.
Please understand one thing. Terror as the jihad and extremism which we once did support in Afghanistan is now not the policy of the government.
Since when?
It cannot be because these people, the extremists now who are being funded, by the way, the extremists now who are being funded from abroad, who are receiving money from abroad, are now hurting Pakistan.
Yeah, so now they are beginning.
How can you go on saying that it is manufactured here?
Now you are saying, this is a very important statement, Mr. Hilali. You are saying now it's beginning to hurt us, so we've stopped supporting terrorism. In effect, therefore, you just said that we have been supporting terrorism. I'm asking you today, give me 1 minute, Mr. Hilali, before you jump on that. Tell me, give me a date. Give me a date when your government and your people and your ISI and your army stopped supporting terrorism. Which is the watershed moment when Pakistan went through that massive self-realization? Which year?
We do not, we support people, we do not support terrorists. We supported people during the Afghan jihad who wanted to free their country from the Soviet troops, troops which invaded their country and whom you supported.
Sir, let me tell you.
The invasion, shamefully for India.
Sir, let me tell you.
India supported the invasion of
Afghanistan
by the Soviet Union.
Sir,
and here you are trying to get a moral high ground. I mean, for God's sake.
I don't understand. Are you trying to justify the killing of more than 160 people by going back into history? I just want to point out here, you say Afghan jihad, certainly in 2004. There was no Afghan jihad which had begun then. And if you know the particular case, Mr. Hilali, I don't know if you know, I don't know if Mr. Jilani knows, Casey, welcome. The case of Willie Bridget, who was part of an Al-Qaeda group of militants in Europe involved in numerous plots. A Briton who trained with Lashkar and were later convicted as the ringleader of a foiled 2004 plot against London by Al-Qaeda testified. I'm reading from the court papers, sir, that ISI officers screened and trained foreign recruits in Lashkar camps in the year 2000, 2001, 2002.
You know, can I say something?
Yes, Mr. Jilani. I'm reading factual court documents here.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, firstly, I think you are reading too much into it. For you know, let's wait for this guy to be cross-examined. Let's wait for the verdict of the court to come out. So I think you should not come hard even on the Indian government saying that why is the Indian government not taking any action, because I think it will be overreaction on the part of anyone just on the basis of one statement, because, you know, please keep this in mind, it's possible. Although, you know, it's likely that the guy is telling the truth, but it's also possible that his statement may be partly based on falsehood.
Mr.